Hello again, everyone. I'm Bill Brenner, head of content for Cyber Risk Alliance, which includes SC Media, Security Weekly, and we are here at the end of the first full day of Identiverse here at the Aria in Las Vegas. If you want to keep up to date on all of our coverage this week while we're out here, you can do so by visiting securityweekly.com/IDV. And I am joined here by my colleague and our chief writer on all things identity, Paul Wagenseil.
Hello.
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 So, you know, when we started the day, I sat here with Ron Eddings, and we were talking about our impressions from yesterday. And some of the things that stuck out for me is how you really are hearing a lot about identity as an attack vector, which is, somewhat of a new thing in the way it's being. You know, I'm thinking about Cisco when we did a panel cast with them a couple of weeks ago, and it was identity as the new Trojan horse.
Oh, God.
But you see more concern about identity as an attack vector and what to do about that. And then the role AI plays in all of that, but also in the solution to getting us to more solid identity security. I know you went to some talks today, so kind of unpack.
Well, I guess along the lines of identity as an attack vector, probably the one that is most relevant to that was the one I had to leave early just now to get here, which was about securing machine identities, service accounts, other machine identities, which are sort of an afterthought for a lot of identity management, I guess, and managers. Yet the truth is that they really, or at least this guy, Matt Topper from Uber Ether, said they really need to be considered and looked at the same way that human identities are, and examined and verified in many ways. Because, I don't know, I saw a statistic recently, and I don't know how this was really quantified, is that there are thousands of machine identities for every human identity. I'm not sure how you can quantify that, but there's definitely a hell of a lot out there. And a lot of them kind of slip under the radar. One machine needs to talk to another. This machine, this app needs to run that. There are many ways to do that. And one thing this guy Matt Topper said was a really simple solution would be to basically TLS encrypt all machine-to-machine communications. It might add a little transportation time, but probably not much, but it would slow down a lot of attacks. So if you're considering a machine identity, a service account, an app, as a possible attack vector, that might be some way to sort of mitigate, if not completely remediate, that problem. I think that's an interesting angle about identity as the attack vector. That's certainly turning on the whole identity as a new perimeter on its head. But I think it's a valid it's a valid concern. It's certainly, obviously, it's always been an attack vector. Whenever someone stole a password and broke into an account, that's always been an attack vector. So, in a way, maybe this is just a magnification of that. An extrapolation of just an account takeover. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and I think, it would be unfair to say, everybody's just talking about identity as an attack vector here. Of course not. There are a lot of great discussions happening out here about identity security. We'll call it 4.0. We'll call it 5.0. But things that you and I have been covering for 20 years now. I keep thinking of 2006 when Bill Gates got up at RSA and said, "This is the end of passwords," and not quite. It's taken a little longer, but it does seem like we're closer than we've ever been. And I'm thinking of an article that you wrote not too long ago about what the security marketplace, specifically identity companies, are doing compared to where most people are at.
Well, yeah, that's really an issue, and paradoxically, the big leap in identity security that is right over the horizon, is already being implemented, is passkeys, and ironically, it's aimed at consumers who are the people least prepared to understand it.
Yeah.
Which is the real irony about it. Passkeys really do work very well. I'm impressed. They do have some issues, which I can get into in a second, but they really do work well if they're implemented properly. They are probably as close to a magic bullet as you're gonna get right now for identity, especially on the consumer side. The ironic part is that they're not really that well suited right now to enterprise use. They can be. In fact, I spoke to a guy from Dashlane just now about how they're trying to basically make it manageable for enterprises. But the ironic thing is that the average person is still having trouble setting up MFA. We're talking SMS MFA, the weakest form. A lot of people don't even want to do it. One problem I actually observed is that Apple made it difficult to set up MFA, made it a real pain in the ass in a way that Google didn't. And I think that probably increased some resistance because they tied it to the device, but too much in a way, if that makes any sense. So I think people are, I don't think most people have even heard of security keys. I have one on my keychain, but I work in this industry. I'm used to it. And I don't know if... I think there's going to have to be a real, what someone else called teleportation of the consumer from SMS MFA to passkeys. Just have to leapfrog everything else and get right to passkeys. But somehow, I don't know how to take the consumer across that bridge. I know Google and Apple and Microsoft are trying as hard as they can. They've just, I think they've got to have a massive advertising campaign, maybe a massive PR campaign, because otherwise it's not going to work. And that's a funny thing. That's not a technical issue. That's an education issue.
Yeah. So as you've walked the floor
Mm-hmm.
and you've attended talks, what are some of the things that have stuck with you in terms of where identity security companies are really...
Well, I think one thing I'm learning is how little I know about identity security. I thought I knew a fair amount, but I've gone to some of these talks, and a lot of this stuff just goes over my head, and it's going by so quickly I don't even have time to Google the terms. I've got a lot to learn, and I think obviously the average person does, and obviously the average enterprise has a lot to learn too. I wrote that paper a couple of months ago about how the public is having trouble catching up to advances in identity security. I think that's true of enterprises as well. I think a lot of enterprises still think it's like 2010, 2015. The advances in identity security have been so rapid just since 2015 that it's an entirely new world out there. And not just in terms of identity security, of course, the cloud use, hybrid setups, work from home, all that's changed everything so quickly. And identity security actually has done a pretty good job of keeping up. Mm-hmm. Now they have to sell it to their customers, the enterprises. And I think a lot of enterprises may not quite understand how much of this stuff is actually necessary.
How far behind do you think they are in really catching on?
A decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily. Not the identity security companies,
but
their
right.
clients.
Of course,
their clients, the people they're trying to sell things to. They are 3 steps behind. And I've interviewed people here, and I've realized that a lot of the things that they're trying to sell are really necessary, and yet it's going to be so hard to explain that to like the C-suite. To explain, you basically have to take them through different stages of experience. That's going to take a whole day just to explain why this is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a problem.
But everybody here is doing their best to push everybody else forward. So we'll be back here tomorrow to see how that goes.
By the nose.
Yep. So we'll be back here tomorrow to talk about what comes next. And again, just a reminder to everybody, you can follow along with our coverage at securityweekly.com/. IDV, and great show so far. A lot of companies doing innovative things, and it's been an energizing week. So more to come tomorrow. But for now, I'm Bill Brenner, and this is Paul Wagenseil, and we're closing out Cyberist TV for this evening. We'll be back in the morning, bright and early.
Woohoo!